You did a little bit of this at the Tonys. Lessons learned so far?
Ooh. Try to avoid a big project that you know that you cannot control the schedule of. Try and not to take it on if you're also doing one of the most ambitious tours of your life. That was probably the lesson I picked up. Because that's the thing, like we were in Australia when the first preview happened because we had to be.
You weren't just in Raleigh on tour.
No. We were as far away as you could possibly be. And there was no way we couldn't be there. I mean, this tour had been booked, a year in advance. But the Spider-Man project kept changing, the schedules because of delays. So it was just impossible to avoid that collision.
Lesson for me, don't hang out with Elton John. Because he's like, I loved it. It was such a wonderful thing. I did it for 3 weeks, darling. And, we've spent, how long is it?
7 years. Not all the time. I mean, we had weekends off and... No, but we did a lot of work in little sections over a very long period of time.
Is it, interviewers always ask this question, is it a different discipline, songwriting for this, as opposed to anthemic arena songwriting?
It's very different, but we wanted to drag it more into our area somewhat. I mean, Broadway songwriting is so technical, and it has to be so specific. The lyrics have to drive the story, and they have to be very, very clear, and they have to be character-driven. In rock and roll, you want there to be more poetry in the words. And for us, I think we felt if we were going to do service to ourselves as writers and to our fans, it was if we could find a way to serve the narrative and the characters, but not go necessarily as far as the classic Broadway approach. And so it was a dance. The first draft of the lyrics was probably too abstract, and we've been slowly bringing it into focus. But I think we've got a good balance now. So these are songs people can listen to on the radio and at home, and are going to, enjoy them, but they're not like classic Broadway songs.
And we have, we're completely out of our depth here, which is a fun feeling, it's always seems to be the way for our band is the best work comes when we don't know what we're doing. I mean, no one takes us serious.
Joey, hold the rumble!
We're like students, in a way, here, and Julie was a great master to learn from. She was such a really concentrated, gifted dramatist and visual artist. We learned a lot from it. And then when Phil McKinley came in, the sort of gentleman general, we learned a whole set of other skills. I think we're just always going, we're like kids who won't leave college, I think.
Did you think you were up to it when you got into it, in a way you don't now?
I think we knew we didn't know enough to go into something like this without some serious kind of backup in the form of Julie and our original producer Tony Adams, who unfortunately passed away, Glenn Berger, who's the scriptwriter, and David Campbell, who's our arranger, and a great team of collaborators. So we were confident, feeling that we brought a lot to the table, but we were working with some really talented, experienced people who could help us out. So I think we were here to learn as much as we were to do our thing.
You mentioned that a crucial gentleman to this process passed away. He didn't just pass away. That was brutal and intimate for you at a crucial time.
It was incredibly shocking, and it really floored me for a number of weeks because of the dramatic situation. Tony, who was our producer, had literally come over with the contract that he wanted me to sign. Paul McGuinness, our manager, was there, having a wonderful very upbeat kind of meeting. We were going to open a bottle of champagne. It was that sort of a mood, and came back in the room with a pen, and our manager Paul McGuinness was saying to Tony, what's wrong? And he seemed to me to have gone into some sort of seizure or whatever, and we called the emergency services and still didn't really fully know, what the problem was, but then discovered it was some kind of major brain hemorrhage, and he passed away. So, it was personally devastating at the time, but also for us in the project, couldn't have been a worse thing, because he was really the person who got the whole project going. He was the one who got us all together on this venture, and he was in many ways the sort of driving force and the spirit of the whole thing. So to lose him at that moment sent us into real turmoil, which took a lot of time and money, it turned out, because those that filled his shoes just didn't have his vision or experience.
And that's really the only thing I get annoyed about is when the numbers just keep being regurgitated, the budget. And first of all, the people who walk through these doors don't care what the budget is. They just care they're going to see something wonderful and magic. The budget will be half the size it is now on another production. That it was post Tony Adams' death, all the chaos and confusion arrived on the money front, and that's it. It's over with. Because when people say $70 million, they think like we've spent $70 million on the stage. We haven't. We've spent $70 million trying to save a situation that was very chaotic.
Why does it anger you? I mean, why?
Because it takes the attention away from the artfulness of these people's work, the performers, the songs. It feels like, it feels like a distraction for me. Now, in the first version of Spider-Man Turn Off the Door, was it working? Was the story working? No. That's okay. Focus on that.
And I'm here probably because this became a news story. In a way, no one wanted it to become a news story. And my bias on the table, I've known you both for some time, and here in my day job, we're reporting various acts of mayhem happening in this theater. As a news story, it reminded me of the times when tornado. When's the president going to visit? The president's on a European trip. Why isn't he here? Because there's damage and he needs to comfort people. As you said, you couldn't have been further away during, shall we call them, the troubles here in this theater. It must have been highly frustrating for all of you. This is your handiwork.
Yeah, it couldn't have been worse, because the previews had ended up being delayed, so that the first preview was the first time that the show was fully run from one end to the next. So not only were we not here for the first preview, but we didn't actually get to see the show until we got back from Australia. So the first time Bono and I saw the show complete was on a little computer screen, which had been like a video had been made of one of the early previews. And we were trying to figure out, what was going on, whether we liked it, whether it was working, from this, ridiculous situation. It was really not great. But it was funny. Even from that first little video, we could see what was great, and we could see that there were still some things that needed to be fixed.
Have your names taken a hit, do you think?
I don't believe so. I think the project has come through the fire, and I think that it's going to survive. I truly believe that. And I think that the difficulties will eventually sort of become kind of forgotten about, and I think the thing that will remain is the show, and I think I'm very proud of it.
That's exactly right. I think we would have taken a hit if we'd stood over something that really sucked. And in fact, it's a magical piece of theater. Maybe it wouldn't look good on us if we'd let it go. I think if we were quitters, I don't think that would suit us. But we stuck with it, and I feel within the Broadway community they have a respect for us for not, running, getting out of Dodge when things were going wrong. But we stuck by it, and there's been some amazing stories have emerged out of this. Chris Tierney, who, in that horrible accident, that freak accident, hurt himself so badly, back in the show now, and seems to be even larger than life. I mean, this dude is an actual rock star. If you want to actually interview a proper one, I feel like an impersonator sometimes. And but he's a real rock star. His heroism, the uplift with the crew, that from his own morale was incredible. Patrick Page, who plays the Goblin, and this is one of the great villains ever seen on Broadway. Everyone is saying this, and he, on the night after the accident, everyone gathered. We weren't there, and there was great despair. Somebody had hurt themselves, could have killed himself, and there's shock around. And Patrick Page said in a very actorly way, he said, "Well, this is the end of it now. It'll all turn around now, because today," he said, "is the 21st of December, the winter solstice. From now on, things are going to get brighter. We'll turn off the dark," and they all punched the air.
This is not your first rodeo in terms of getting reviewed and having your work picked apart by folks who many artists believe are sitting in the cheap seats. And have you been tempted? There's another brutal review this morning in one of the Chicago papers. Have you been tempted to go all Ireland on one or two of these people? How do you deal with that part of this?
I mean, reviewers are hired because they can write and because they have strong opinions. And so you're going to get some people who are going to love what you do, and some people are just going to hate it no matter what. So you can't really live or die by the reviews. You really have to think about the members of the audience and what they're taking away from the night. And on that basis, I don't think we've got anything to worry about.
I think if there's 50-50 good and bad reviews, it would be a huge victory for this play. And because so many people have taken entrenched positions on it, and there's general goodwill from the community, there will be, there'll be some people who want to make a name for themselves by, turning it into a blood sport on Wednesday morning. But if there's 50% of people saying, no, this is why theatre is special, because you need to innovate, you need to move things forward. I mean, 2 years ago, people were complaining that there was no new original scores being written, that there was these jukebox musicals everywhere, and what had happened to Broadway. And then we arrived, we're from out of town, sure, we've got some new ideas, but you would imagine people would welcome that, and I think now largely they are.
You mentioned the Broadway DNA. No play shall be reviewed until it opens. And to that, several of the critics, there might have even been a mention of the New York Post last night, several of the critics said, okay, so open this already, we're gonna break this tradition. And that put you squarely against the Broadway old guard.
Yeah, that wasn't, I mean, people say the previews had gone on too long, but lots of shows have previews this length. They're just outside of New York. We couldn't move outside of New York because this is technically so difficult. So, but actually, the reviews, even at U2, we have amazing, great critical acclaim. People think all the time. But I remember times with U2 where we've taken some serious black eyes. And, sometimes, like our Zoo TV tour, people were very confused by it early on. Now people call it, Rolling Stone calls it the Sgt. Pepper's of tours. I think we're quite comfortable being in the ring, being beaten by big bruising boxers.
You can't take it too seriously. I mean, some of the most successful shows of all time have had horrible reviews, and so it isn't an indication of how things are going to go for you.
Did you do your best? Looking out over this, knowing what's going to happen here Tuesday night, did you do your best?
We're 10% away. The next few months, we'll have gotten it to a place where Edge and myself will stop criticizing. It's just there. It's just there.
They say that Broadway shows are never finished, they just open. And it's a bit like a U2 record. We're so close to being able to sign off on it, and it's really down to details that most people wouldn't know or notice or care about. But to us, it's that little bit that's just going to make it really shine for us. The important thing is it's working. It's, for the first time, this show is really working. And 1.0, which is what we're calling the original version, had so many great things about it. It was so magical, but there was something that wasn't working. It's now working.
By working, you mean connecting with people?
I'm talking about being greater than the sum of its parts. Like an experience that you just get lost in, and it takes you on a journey and delivers something at the end of the show that feels like it's brought you home. Whereas the first version left you a little bit in a state of confusion. I mean, it was beautiful and mysterious and magical, but this is now a story that's properly told.
And Peter Parker, you know, what makes him a superhero is not his spider powers. It's his personal integrity. And if people leave the theater feeling that, we've won.